Welcome to Movie Time Machine, where each episode we take a movie from the past and relive it in the present. This week's movie, Goodfellas, released in 1990, directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Ray Liotta, Joe Pesci, and Robert De Niro. I'm your Time Machine host, Chad, surrounded by my Time Machine friends, Kris and Jamie. How you guys doing tonight?
Not Italian, but I'm still here anyway.
Doing great. Thank you.
Go get your shine box.
As we begin this conversation, Chad, just tell me about your thoughts. Like, best to worst Scorsese movies. Mainly just talk to me about The Departed.
Yeah, start there. The Departed, I don't think that's a great movie. Great cast. Everyone's trying to outdo each other. Goodfellas probably is best, my favorite. Casino is probably number 2.
What about The Wolf of Wall Street? How do you feel about that one?
That's an awesome movie. Wolf of Wall Street, Shutter Island, I thought was.
I like Shutter Island.
Yeah.
Gangs in New York.
I haven't.
See, I love Gangs in New York.
I want to see that movie. I
like Gangs in New York a lot. Daniel Day-Lewis, he kills it in that movie. It's a great.
I love Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, he really does.
Mm-hmm.
That might be Cameron Diaz's finest hour too, if I remember right. She's really good in The Mask, but
she's in Gangs.
Yeah, she's in Gangs.
Oh, did not know that. All right. So, what about you?
Like my favorite
top 3.
I would go. I love The Departed. I absolutely love The Departed.
So where's Goodfellas fall?
All right, walk me through. So what is TL done? We said Casino. Oh, no, I would probably go, for me, it would be Departed, Wolf of Wall Street, and then Gangs of New York. Goodfellas, I like Goodfellas, but it didn't make the top 3 for me.
No.
No.
Wow. How about you, Jamie?
Let's see here. I watched probably fewer Scorsese films than I care to admit, but off the top of my head, The Departed's my favorite. Then it would be Goodfellas. And it's probably a toss-up between Gangs and... Yeah, no, it's probably Gangs. My hot take is that I'm not super hot on Taxi Driver. I got to revisit it. I think I might have been too young when I saw that one because... I don't know, it's hailed as his masterpiece, and just it didn't really land for me.
I mean, I don't know. I've watched that maybe when I was in my early 20s, and I did not really. I tried to watch that multiple times, and it just did not land with me.
I saw Taxi Driver around the same time that I saw De Niro in what is it? The Bull.
Raging Bull.
Raging Bull, and I could not do Raging Bull, but I like Taxi Driver a lot. I thought it was a very unique take, and yeah, I enjoyed him a lot in that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that character in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that movie feels like a really long movie.
Yeah, it does. And Travis Bickly's a good character, but he's not a fun hang. So that it's good and bad in that way. For me, I guess.
I also watched that around the same time that I watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And I just feel like that was so memorable for me. Like, that stole the show.
Yeah, Cuckoo's Nest trumps almost all.
Yeah. Up there with one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it was just, it was incredible. That was a wonderful, wonderful movie. And they were, it's just, they're both very good movies, but that, for me, just stole the show.
Yeah, I really need to. Has anyone seen Silence 2016 with Adam Driver and, what's his name? Spider-Man 2, Andrew Garfield?
No.
Oh, I got to see that. That's kind of right in my wheelhouse. It's 2 Jesuit priests who are going to find their teacher in Imperial Japan. A lot of Catholic implications in there for me that as an ex-Catholic, but I'm still fascinated by the church. So particularly Jesuits, it's kind of a me thing. I gotta see that movie.
Oh, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
The pageantry and the tradition behind that kind of stuff is really fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so a few episodes ago, I said, one for the next couple episodes, let's pick one of our favorite movies. And now it's my turn for this episode. So I chose the movie Goodfellas. And the reason why I chose this movie, I think I was really thinking about this a lot, and like why this movie has resonated with me. And I think maybe like the timing of when I saw it, like I saw it probably not too long after home video release, because I caught it on HBO, and it wasn't like a movie that was like I was anxious to watch. It was kind of one of those things like on a whim, like it just came up like a HBO promo, like this is going to be on. So like, boom, put a blank tape in the VCR and like set it to record. And something just about the story just kind of grabbed me and like blew me away. It might have been like, again, like the timing, like I'm just moved back to Minnesota from home. I was like probably 12 years old. I think maybe that had a lot to do with it. Kind of like maybe losing like a father there, and like so it's kind of like a dark time for me. And I think this movie kind of like plays into that. It's really like kind of dark themed, but just kind of like the realistic reality of it too. Like thinking
it's not glamorized. It's well, I guess it is glamorized to a certain degree, but it's also honest. And when you come back down to earth from that criminal lifestyle, you come crashing hard.
Yeah. But actually, earlier when we were talking about like movies and feelings, I think just this movie, like once I finally get to the end, like the emotion and like the feeling that I remember having after this was like, I need to go back and watch this again. Like this was like a wild ride, and like turbulence and like everything, and like just like the rise and fall of this character and like everyone around him, you know? So that's pretty much why I chose this movie.
Yeah, I think like we were talking about earlier, the idea that like some of our favorite movies like elicit these emotions that just don't make sense, or that make sense, and it's very powerful. And I think we were talking about like Almost Famous, or for me that might be Gladiator, or whatever that movie might be. But like there are movies, and I think it's similar to music or whatever you subscribe to that do something similar. And it sounds like this is one of those movies that just in whatever way they elicit a feeling, good, bad, or indifferent, but they elicit a feeling of whatever within you. And I think like any movie that can do that for someone, that's powerful. That's huge.
Probably my most memorable scene, my favorite scene in this movie is the Lufthansa heist. It's like the largest heist in U.S. history at the JFK airport. And they find out that Stax afterwards, he like got high and overslept somewhere and like left his truck parked somewhere. Then like the cops found it, and then like they found the prints on the truck, and like they knew eventually they're going to get the Stax. So like then they whack Stax. Then we get to the scene where it's like the kids playing stickball in like the parking lot. Then they're walking up on the pink Cadillac. Then like you get like the piano breakdown from Layla just kind of punches in, and it's just like the slow kind of camera zoom up to the car, then it kind of goes along the side of the car, and you see that the two dead bodies in there, and like just like it gives me goosebumps every time when this whole like scene and this whole montage starts, and this kind of it follows you through to like, you know, like the guy hanging in like the meat locker on the truck trailer. The guy finding the guys in like the garbage truck. And
I think like one of the things that make that so powerful though is like right before they show the kids with like the hockey stick and whatnot and the hockey ball is like the scene where they're at the restaurant or the bar, and he's like, it's Robert De Niro's character who's saying like, you can't be flashy, and like the guy and his wife pull up with like the pink Cadillac, and he's like, no, it's cool because I put it in my mom's name.
Right.
Or it's the other guy who's found in like the in the meat locker, he and his wife, and like his wife is coming in with like this fur coat, and again Robert De Niro's character is like, what are you doing? You can't be flashy. And I feel like part of like what makes those couple of scenes is this idea that like there's been this setup of like there's a behavior and a strong set of behavior that is like right and wrong, and people aren't adhering to what has been set out. And so I feel like you see these deaths, you see these things playing out that like are based on Robert De Niro's understanding as imperfect. It's not right. They're being flashy, and like that's what's leading to these deaths. And I absolutely, in my opinion, I think that's like what makes that for me.
Yeah, and that whole montage though, it goes all the way through, and it ends with
like even like
Tommy's getting made. That's that montage lasts all the way through the moment where like Tommy's going to get made. The car pulls down to like the garage, and up to the scene where like he walks into that room and he has that moment of like, no, like he knows he's done, and he gets whacked. And I guess the music ends like right then. After that, it's Jamie Conway getting the call that. I think you want to talk about head questions about how De Niro's character is emoting after getting the call that.
Yeah, you know, I struggled with that. Like I think about my experiences with kind of this kind of like mob or gangster stylistic movies, and I think of that like I grew up watching like Sopranos. Like the Sopranos is what I watched or those kind of things, and for me, seeing De Niro's character like cry after that call to me was really unique. I appreciate the idea of like a gangster having that vulnerability. I think of Tony Soprano having that vulnerability with his wife, or maybe even like, you know, daughter Meadow or whomever. Or I see his character having that with his psychologist or therapist. But for me, the emotion from De Niro's character straight out of like that phone call to me where he cries, and he's crying in front of, you know, Ray Liotta, he's crying in a public space. Like to me, like that just felt disingenuous in a way that like I don't think that character would have those emotions in that space. I believe that he feels sad. It's evident in Scorsese does a great job of making me believe that like he's very invested in this, and like the idea that like we're gonna have a made man in our team that like makes us made men. But I feel like that emotion, that crying, that vulnerability wouldn't happen there in the moment directly after that phone call in the parking lot. I feel like that would happen later on, and that to me became that like was difficult for me, that created disbelief.
And I kind of had a perfect marriage reaction to both of your responses, because what didn't occur to me until this rewatch is that the whole time, I mean, Tommy DeVito is one of the most iconic film characters ever, because he's such a loose cannon. And I really enjoy the scene where we first meet him and everyone's laughing at his jokes and you don't realize why, but it's because he's insane and no one wants to piss him off. And so you think he's really, really dangerous, which he is. But that scene highlights that, in fact, Jimmy's kind of the real monster, because while Tommy is so outwardly off kilter, Jimmy is Mr. Cool and Mr. Composed. And, you know, it's not until then that you realize just what he's capable of for taking out his entire crew after they pulled off, you know, one of the greatest heists ever. And, you know, it just shows that he'll stop at nothing to keep what's his and, you know, keep his nose clean. And so I guess, Chris, I kind of agree with you, too, that breakdown, I don't know, I struggle with it, too, because, you know, Jimmy is Mr. Snake in the Grass, and you don't realize it until it's too late.
Mm-hmm. But I think, like, he struggled with, like, those decisions, too, right? Like, I mean, I guess I look at it and I think he struggles, but I also think, like, when he was telling Ray, like, we're gonna call it off, like, I think he had a hit on
Maury,
yeah. Like the hit on Maury, like Ray was struggling with that, and I think like he was able to recognize that, and he was like, no, we're gonna call it off, and then he had others do it. Like, I think he has enough know-how and knowledge to be able to recognize that. And to your point, the snake in the grass comment, like, I don't know, like, I feel like there'd be greater distance, and I recognize again that this is one of his friends, but I also think like this whole, like, in this arena, in these areas, like, it is a lot of like image. It's how do others perceive me. I struggle with the idea that that was the emotion that was being showed, regardless of how close you are to that individual. It's something. I think, like,
yeah,
something different.
yeah. I had never even like crossed my mind until like you had brought that up. That I guess it just kind of that reaction just seemed natural to me, because having in that scene, like having like Tommy made, it was like they're saying that it was like having them made, and I think that was like, you know, they would kind of get like a step up on everybody having that connection to a made man. Like it would really change things for them, I think, and like it's kind of like a power grab, and I think it's something that just came unexpected to that character. But yeah, I guess I don't really have any more than that, because that thought never even really crossed my mind. Like,
but I don't know. Like I would maybe like push back or challenge the idea of like that's unaccepted. Like he had been in the area for a while, and like I recognize he's a hothead and he has his like idiosyncrasies, but like over time you'd think that like as you continue to like, they talk a lot about respect, and they talk a lot about like earning your keep, and they talk a lot about like being able to like kind of show that. I would suspect that over time, like his expectation is that at some point he's doing this and he's showing the respect, and he's you know, pushing it forward because he expects that at some point he's going to be made. Do you really think he didn't? Or do you think like that?
Think that Tommy was going to be made? Or
yeah.
I don't know.
If I'm in that business, and I think like we're doing this because we're taking care of our elders, and we're being respectful, and like I'm making you sandwiches and I'm doing these runs, it's because I think that in 20 to 30, 40 years time, I'm going to be a made man, and that's going to be me. If I don't have that image, then why am I doing it? Why would anybody do that if that's not the idea, is that over time you'd become that person?
Well, and maybe to play devil's advocate, maybe that is why he does break down, because since he's not 100% Sicilian, he himself can never be made. So that's the closest he's ever going to get, is Tommy getting made. Which, I mean, just
but he not being 100% Sicilian is Ray Liotta's character. Is that
they're both
are they
Irish?
both
Irish.
Okay. So neither of them could, which is, and they talk about that a little bit in like that like scene.
Yeah, right before he takes the call.
Right.
And that's a perspective that I didn't think about, and I think is like that makes way more sense to me. But still, I think I struggle with the idea of like the outward projection of like I'm going to be vulnerable, and I think like in a world of what they do, that vulnerability I think is completely subversive. I think it is a thing that happens with two people there in a small room, and it's your wife and whomever, and I think like I don't think that's the way that is projected out, and I think that's what I struggle with, is I don't know that happens in that moment. I think he feels that, and I think most people, especially if you're going to be a good gangster, are able to disconnect that and show that later, or feel those feelings later.
But part of me thinks, though, like throughout this movie, like, so like Jimmy Conway, Tommy, and Henry, they're kind of becoming unhinged, and they're not living by that code, because they start to do things, they start to go behind the backs of the people that they are giving tribute to. Was it like, is it Paul Cicero?
Yeah,
Paulie, yeah. Like, they're doing things like, he said, like, don't get involved in that. Then, like, they're doing, like Henry's doing, like, his Pittsburgh connection. And, like, then he gets, like, Jimmy Conway involved. And, like, they're doing all the stuff behind his back. And it's, like, I think it all happens, too, like, after the Lufthansa heist. After that, like, that's when, like, things really start to fall apart for these characters in this movie. Like, Tommy's gone. Jimmy Conway gets to the point where he's just like doesn't want fucking anything to do with like, you know, like Henry. He's like that one part, he's like bringing him like silencer for guns, and he's just like, all right, these don't fit, but get out of here, stay off that shit. Like, totally wants to be disconnected from all this. And like Henry Hill, like he's like, off like doing things on his own, and like which eventually leads to like him getting
That's really interesting.
pinched because like yeah.
Well, I was gonna say like the thing that I took from that scene of like when he was like, I bought these guns, and he didn't want anything, like he didn't want them. Like I was taking that to be more of a narrative around like how like strung out Ray Liotta's character was, like because like he like tried putting the silencers on and all of that, and they didn't fit, and I led that to like that led me to believe like he's doing like he's getting this stuff from like his Pittsburgh people, and he's talking about like his girlfriend that he goes to do and like create the drugs or whatever. But like I took that as like a narrative of like his paranoia. You know, during that same scene, it constantly walked through like the helicopter, and like him, like it just seemed like he was on his shit as well. And like I looked at it as like is De Niro's character is being like more of like the competent insane one of like, what, get off that shit because you're clearly insane, and like you bought these guns that like you're buying these parts that don't fit and they don't make sense, and so get off what you're doing and like start like coming back to the group because we need who you were. And
maybe it's like because he answers the door in like a robe.
Yeah,
or something like.
But also like, did you like? I don't know if you saw the timestamps, but the timestamps were at like 6:30 a.m. Like I took that also like because he woke up at like 4:40 or like 4 or maybe 5 o'clock, and I took it as like he's been up all night, fucking strung out on drugs. He's like, oh, you know, now's the time, and I need to go over there. And
when you're strung out, you just have absolutely no.
So he's like he's going over there at a time that is like completely like so early based on what's the normal for them, and I took that being as like, what are you doing?
Right. It's in an attempt to lay this out and hopefully not reach intellectually past what I can explain. It's so you got the old Italian gangster world that they've built, run primarily by Sicilians that they brought from Italy to the United States, and I feel that like Jimmy and Henry, like that's the American story. You know, you have this old community involved where everybody wins, and then when it becomes more American, when capitalism starts to creep in and these guys start to reach higher for more for themselves, that's when it starts to fall apart. And that is when you have to, you know, get all the drugs, kill everybody else to make sure you're the only guy on top. I mean, we're still doing that now. We're still trying to get all the money, and everyone's doing all the drugs, you know, in the United States right now. So I don't know. That's one thing that, again, I didn't realize until this rewatch. That's very cool about this movie and kind of adds to, I guess, keeps it more relevant. Or I guess as relevant as it was when it came out in the 90s, referencing a gangster from the 70s.
The scene where they have to go back and dig up Billy Batts' body, like anything to do with like the whole Billy Batts thing is pretty good. The spider scene where Spider gets shot. Scene where Karen wakes Henry up with the gun and then his face is pretty intense scene. And just like the whole prison life. Like they go, but they're still getting like food brought in, and like they have like this right, and just eating like these great meals. They're having like red wine, white wine. They're making their own pasta sauce. But
well, that one's disorienting too because they say they're in prison, and you think like as the narrator you don't trust them for a second. You're like, I'm expecting them to be in their apartment or house or whatever, and
they're just living kind of like their normal lives. Their space is just confined a little bit more,
right?
But it just kind of brings in like all the corruption too.
Do they
like
ever
paid off? And
I'm just thinking about this now, but do they ever outline what the drugs is that Ray Liotta's character is brought in, like that he's taking? So like during that scene, like
I think it's all like cocaine because like there's
really?
lots of scenes of where they're like cutting it too.
Yeah, but like that's always a white powder. This was pill form, which led me to believe like maybe it was something for anxiety or maybe something for depression. But because it also felt but it also seemed like he was like ashamed of it, right? Like because he got it brought in and he grabbed some when they were like getting ready to eat, and then he went and hid it like hit it immediately, which led me to believe like there was like some shame that was associated with it, which I thought was like he was being medicated for some sort of like depression, anxiety, something like that.
Well, doesn't the doctor give him a Valium when he's...
Yeah, but that was after that, because that was after he's out and he's like seeing the airplane and he's like going to pick up his brother in the wheelchair and like
later Paulie like makes a comment to him like he's like, now that you're out, don't be doing that shit. He's like, you had to do whatever you had to do while you're in, but now that you're out, you need to stop. I wonder if that's what he was referencing, because I don't remember.
So what do you think that would be though? Like, what is he referencing then? Like, what's the what is that
I assume
then?
that he was referencing the drugs, but I don't know what he was taking. Like,
okay, because like that's the thing that I'm most intrigued by is like he gets these things, and the way that I saw it is that it was they were being brought in by his wife, because there's then the scene like with her bringing like the salami and like that kind of stuff, fucking throwing it out when she's feeling angry because she saw that his mistress, his guma, had come. You know, so I'm curious what those pills were supposed to be and like what.
Well, I don't think it's a stretch to. I mean, antidepressants are a safe guess given what The Sopranos took from Goodfellas. I mean, that's like Tony's biggest secret throughout most of the show is that he's going to therapy. So
and it just happens to be with the same woman,
right?
Like,
right.
That to me blew me away.
Yeah.
But all right, I've been speaking quite a bit on my favorite scenes. Do you wanna?
Yeah.
Give some highlights. Give some highlights.
Yeah, we kind of talked about Billy Bats, but I think it's hard to pick. I mean, they all run into each other too, so it's kind of hard to isolate one scene. And I love a lot of them, but one going through this time that I really enjoyed is right after they think they kill Billy, and they're going to Tommy's mom's house to get a shovel. And then they just get sidetracked because they wake up Tommy's mom. And, of course, she's got to, get him in and feed him dinner. And it's just...
Hey, really quick, how many times have you, like, maybe, like, growing up, have had this experience of maybe, like, been out with, like, a friend and, like, go back to, like, their parents' house or your parents' house and, like, trying to be sneaky, then, like, end up waking, like, their parents and, like, trying to deal with, like, this conversation. Yeah. Not having a dead body in the trunk, but just reminding me of, like, times of, like, just being super shit-faced. Like, going back, a friend of mine, and we'd go back there and eat, like, bowls of, like, Captain Crunch. I remember, like, my friend was just, like, eating cereal and just being a loudmouth, and all of a sudden, like, I saw his dad just kind of, like, his shadow kind of show up, appear, like, right behind him. It's like, oh. But,
this is one of my favorite experiences is that I was, like, at my parents' house, my dad's house, and we were eating, hanging out, we were playing like whatever, and my dad comes out like in his underwear, which are just like wonderful tidy whities. He's like, what's
like,
going
but
on
not
here?
Tight, just still kind
yeah,
of
like what's happening? And he's just like, it is me and a girl and like him in his tidy whities. And I was like, that's perfect. What more can you ask for?
Right.
What more can you ask for?
Yeah, I can definitely relate.
Yeah, I think we all can.
Yeah. Well, that's part of what makes it so great too. Is even if you don't have a dead guy in the trunk, that being interrupted in the middle of where you're going. And I don't have Italian family, but just what I've heard and what I've gathered along the way is that seems pretty representative of an Italian mom feeding her son and his friends and making sure everyone's got a good meal and gets to where they need to be. And just her inability to recognize Tommy for the monster that he is just always makes me laugh too.
But like, I'm curious about that too, because I think about like the scene like right before he's made too, right? Like right before, like he's got his suit on, like she's congratulating him. Like clearly she has like some idea of what's going on, like the importance of like him being made, and like the importance of what's going on. But it seems like it's like that selective hearing, that selective of like, what am I like willing to accept versus not accept, and like that to me is really a unique thing.
Yeah, it's the complicated like Carmela Soprano thing too, where she knows what Tony does, but just if she pretends like it's not happening, then she can morally be okay with the lifestyle they have, that kind of thing.
That was like, where'd you get all that money? Oh, they were a pool shark. They used to go down to Chicago and play pool all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, I felt like that was one of the things that like was really
That's
unique.
an actual story that was shared with me.
Was that like put it above the light? I think like that was one of the things that I really enjoyed about this movie was at the beginning with the relationship between Ray Liotta's character and his like wife was like she recognizes what's going on and then she finds her way, like the way that she justifies it. And I thought that was really unique. I feel like I'd never heard like people like talk about it in that way or like justify it in the way that she did. And I thought that was really unique. Even with like the Sopranos, I think like that's a really prominent story. Like I think a lot of people have watched The Sopranos. I think I've never heard Carmela talk about it outwardly in the way that like her character did in the narrative, right? Like she was narrating it, like talking about like her first experiences with the character and like, you know, I know where this comes from, but the way that I've justified it. And I thought that was really a really cool way of doing it and something that I'd never really heard before.
You beat me to the punch. I was going to bring that up too. The fact when Lorraine Bracco starts narrating with Ray Liotta, it catches you off guard because and again, I can't think of another film that does that. We have the narrator, voice of God, and that's it. But yeah, this is a marriage. There's two people here, and I think it's really plays to the strengths of the movie that they bring her in and do that. It's a cool trick, and it catches you off guard.
Yeah, I think like it also makes sense, like the way that she articulates her not approval, but like the way that she articulates like why it's okay or her whatever is like really unique and it's different in it. Like it ends up making sense. And I remember talking about The Sopranos with a friend of mine when like it was first kind of being aired and we were first watching it and like talking about like this is the first like bad person that like you can be like Tony has no other option but to do this and I get it and it makes sense and like you are cheering for the bad person but because you're like he had no other option. And I think it was really unique to see that for a movie. This is my first time ever watching the movie, and I will articulate that. I hadn't seen this before. I'd seen The Sopranos previously, but for this being my first time watching it and like to see that like conversation internally and that monologue and that like discussion to me was huge of how do I personally approve of or allow this behavior? What does it look like for me? That was really cool. For me, some of the scenes that I really liked, I will throw out there that I think for me, one of the areas that I enjoyed the most about this film was the beginning. Like I loved the monologue at the beginning where he talks about, being a gangster and how they were able to run his neighborhood and how he really appreciated that and came to that. And honestly, I loved the first 10 to 15 minutes of him as a young kid and teenager, and I loved everything about that. I loved seeing the story of him like coming to prominence and him coming to like where he's at and like being able to work with Paulie. And like my mom loved the fact that I worked across the street until she knew what it meant. Like that to me was really, really cool. So I love the very first couple of scenes. I thought that was really, really unique and fun. I also was going to say I loved the scene of them like taking care of the body and then like going to like Tommy's mom's house and like having to like sit there and be like, no, the blood is from a deer, like hitting a deer. And like, just
so
like
I cut off the hoof.
Yeah, I cut off the hood. Nobody could keep the hoof. Like,
That's a sin.
Every part of that, like, I just thought was really, really funny, and I enjoyed it, and I thought it was really cool. So
When she has the painting.
Oh,
De Niro's like, hey, it looks like somebody we know.
Yeah,
without the beard. Yeah, you're right.
Yep, I love that. I also like. So I come from like thinking of Pesci as like the
Wet Bandits.
Yeah, from the Wet Bandit of the
Home Alone.
Home Alone. And so for me to see Pesci in this was really, really cool and really unique, especially like the first scene with him kind of like taking the piss and like, what am I, a clown to you? I thought like that was really unique. Like not only am I seeing Pesci with hair, but I'm seeing him with attitude, something I've never seen before. And like, that just to me was a really unique experience because not only like that was his character throughout the entire movie. Like he's a hothead, so like he's being joking and jovial there, but then you think about like the scene where they're in the bar and the guy is kind of busting balls or taking the piss, whatever you want to call it, and they end up killing him. Like to see Pesci in that state and in that character is really unique to me, knowing kind of like what I've seen him in before, right? Like My Cousin Vinny, like those things, like it's not the same in any means, like they're just a little different. So that was really fun. I enjoyed that scene a lot and enjoyed him in the scenes that he was in playing that character. I would say like those were my biggest ones. I really, really enjoyed like the early like first 10 to 15 minutes. That to me was some of the most enjoyable stuff.
100%. Well, and what's funny too is Home Alone came out the same year that Goodfellas was released. So if you were someone who watched Goodfellas and then watched Home Alone, you probably thought Kevin McAllister was going to die. Like, for real.
Yeah. It makes so much sense. That hairpiece looked terrible.
Oh, yeah. It was.
He clearly didn't go to Maury's.
I love the Maury's like advertisements.
So do I.
Oh, it's so good.
It has like
He
the cut
jumps in the
jumping in the
pool.
wall. Yeah. Good.
I love fake commercials within movies.
Yeah.
But actually, I forgot to mention too. Like, I love how this movie ends. Like when it's like the court scene and he's like pointing everything out. Then there's that moment where he breaks the fourth wall, and he's talking to you, just kind of laying everything out. Like how he just like has everything. He could just have it whenever he wanted, Mm-hmm. And now that's all over, he's just going to be another schnook. It's just it cuts from that to like his like looks like they're in some newly built development, and then he comes out in his robe and he picks up the paper and he's just like got like this shitty look on his face. Then he goes back inside and like the Sid Vicious song kicks in, then it ends with like Tommy like shooting at the screen. But I kind of like that breaking the fourth wall.
I think for me, I appreciated more, or what I enjoyed was like the idea of like his, like he's staying in character with that too, like in the regards of talking about like, we know we're going into witness protection, but he's like, we're not going anywhere cold. Like you need to put us somewhere warm. And there's like a little back and forth between he and some of the police officers or FBI agents of like, dude, you have no choice over where you're going. No. We're going to go somewhere warm. And I'm just thinking like, what a fucking asshole. Like this dude, the entire movie.
Like, but that's
his character. Right. And like, I love that. I love that he's like, no. We're going to go somewhere warm. We're going to go.
Just whatever it takes.
Yeah.
I don't. What do you say? It's bronchial or whatever.
Yeah. Yep. Like, I thought that was really funny. I enjoyed that.
No, I like that too, Chad, because he revisits this theme, which Scorsese does in Wolf of Wall Street. If you remember when Jordan Belfort and Kyle Chandler, the investigator, I can't remember his name, but when he's riding the subway like a schmuck, even though he's Mr. Law and did the right thing. It's like, well, you're still not marching through Wall Street with a band and a bunch of money, so is it better? I don't know. That's the question.
I also feel like a lot of Scorsese doesn't like end with like the normal happy ending, right? Like I think of The Departed, where like it comes back and the dude like ends up like killing Damon's character, right? Like you think the bad guy wins and they kind of come back, but like still at the end of the day, it's like it's not a feel good kind of an ending. And I think of the same way with like this. Like I don't think this is a feel good ending, or Wolf of Wall Street is a feel good ending. And or even
what you're
like,
talking about, I mean, people or a lot of these characters are like, it's really about trying to get to the top. Then if you're not going to get to the top, it's just about staying ahead at like all means necessary.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, You know, it's like enemy of my enemy is my friend, and like
You don't got to outrun the bear, just the slowest guy.
That's right. That's right.
Which I like that.
Yeah.
Like I think those kind of like those are my kind of films. Like the idea of people who talk about like I can't watch Seven because it's just like it's not a happy ending, or like I love how Seven ended. Like that is like one of my favorite endings, period. I think I love the idea that he was able to finish what he set forth. Like there's no better ending in my opinion, to that movie. I look at that like similarly to what Scorsese does. Like they're not happy endings, but I think they are like really like unique and cool endings, and endings that like I don't think that could have ended differently that I would have been happy with.
Right.
Do you think Hugo gets whacked at the end of Hugo? Just wondering. I've never seen it.
Is that a Scorsese movie?
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh.
Super strange.
Is that about clocks?
Yeah, it's like probably a kid's
like
movie.
like a French
Maybe it's like a scene that goes dark, then
yeah.
you don't actually see it, but you can interpret that's what
Yeah.
happens. Adults can pick up on it, not kids.
Yeah, the clock ticks to midnight and then fades to
And
black.
just, yeah, dark.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
end. All right, let's do a box office breakdown for the year 1990.
All right, here we go. So, Goodfellas was made on a budget of $25 million, which I think by Scorsese standards was a lot of money. He did a lot of indie stuff, lower budget, and it only made, unfortunately for them, $46.8 million at the box office, which is kind of hard to believe now based on how beloved it is in the film community. So the highest grossing films of 1990, to give some more perspective, leading the list was Ghost with $505 million. Number 2 is Home Alone. 3, Pretty Woman. 4, Dances with Wolves, the eventual Best Picture winner for that year. 5, Total Recall. 6 is Back to the Future Part 3. 7 is Die Hard 2. 8, Presumed Innocent. 9, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And 10 is Kindergarten Cop. Yes, Kindergarten Cop. That's 2 Schwarzeneggers in the top 10.
Total Recall
So
and
what did I
Kindergarten
see this
Cop.
year? I saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the theater that year.
Go Ninja, Go Ninja. Oh no, wrong one. Shoot.
Yeah, this is kind of funny because I feel like this
What was number 1?
Ghost.
Interesting.
Yeah, just growing up as a kid of the 90s, like if you took this movie year and put it in like my parents' VHS collection or like my aunt and uncle's VHS collection, you know, like these movies were everywhere.
Yeah.
Like Blockbuster, like even if I never saw them, like I must have seen the cover
They're
for
prevalent.
Ghost
Yep.
everywhere. Same with Pretty Woman. And I mean, my dad is a big Dances with Wolves fan, so I've seen that handful of times, but yeah, anything else, even if I never saw
You
it, I
had
was
the
very
2
aware of it.
VHS copy, right? The
Yeah,
2 VHS.
the 2 VHS.
Well, I think of like, I don't know about you, but like the first time I saw Dances with Wolves was in like high school. Like it was like a middle school, high school. Like
Yeah,
we're
around
watching it. Like that's the first time I ever saw it, and I remember like watching it in like multiple sections because we were doing it like, you know, class by class.
Yep. Similarly for me, I don't know if we watched it in school, but it was kind of around that age too when first saw it. And this was another funny thing I was thinking about, and it's just only semi-related. With Home Alone, I was thinking about my favorite movies of all time, and Home Alone is
Bushwhacked.
definitely up there. Bushwhacked. Another Daniel Stern classic. But no, like, you guys, I can't think. I think Home Alone might be the movie I've seen more than any other movie. The more I thought about it, you know, I thought it was one of my favorites, like maybe Big Lebowski or something. But if I considered that I watched Home Alone damn near every Christmas, that's, well, it wouldn't be 30 Christmases, but it'd probably be like 20,
Well, you probably
24.
see it a couple times every Christmas, too,
Right.
because it's on all the time.
Yeah, and occasionally in July. So that was
Right.
my,
That's-
like...
For me, that's Christmas Vacation. Like my
Yeah, that's up
family
there,
loved
too.
Christmas Vacation, so like as a kid we would watch that every year, and then my wife, her family would watch it every Christmas. So like we have continued a tradition that every Christmas we watch Christmas Vacation at least once.
Yeah.
So I would say like that is our like our tradition, I would say like that's been one of my movies I've seen the most.
I didn't think it would be a Christmas movie, but it's probably Home Alone.
That's crazy. I would say like I watch Good Will Hunting twice a year for sure. Just like anal retentive, no reason to, just obsessed.
Favorite movie?
Hands down. What's yours, Chad? What movie have you seen the most?
Probably one of the Star Wars original trilogy movies. Probably seen Empire and Return of the Jedi hundreds of times.
Wait, no.
Well, listen. Okay, so
Hundreds.
we got
like
our,
not even 100.
We got
hundreds.
listen to this. We got our VCR probably in '88.
Yeah,
I'm guessing, and my dad did the Columbia Home Video, like 10 VHS tapes for a penny.
Yes.
for a penny. Yeah. So that started with VHS tapes, and then it moved on to like Columbia Clearinghouse for CDs.
It started with cassette tapes.
Cassette tapes, VHS, and then CDs.
Yeah.
Damn, they were ahead of their time.
Yeah. But yeah, I think because Return of the Jedi, and we had Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, but my dad didn't get Star Wars, so I watched Empire and Return a lot. Probably almost every day.
Did you see those before you saw A New Hope?
No.
Okay.
No.
Just wanted to be sure.
No, but yeah, that collection was the first round of VHS tapes we ever owned were RoboCop,
Nice.
Police Academy 4, what's the Cool Hand Luke, Day the Earth Stood Still, Whoopi Goldberg's Burglar.
Wait, I thought you were about to say Sister Act.
Oh, this was years before Sister
Oh,
Act.
bummer.
Sorry. My mom did buy that years later.
All right, that's good to know.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Supported.
Empire, Return of the Jedi. And I think that was it. Yeah. RoboCop was another movie I saw a lot, though. But yeah, most movies, probably Return or... Yeah. I'm more into like the fantasy, sci-fi things, so I'm less about intelligent dialogue.
Chad, I'm glad you brought that up, though, because you just brain blasted me. So, Goodfellas was in Ed McManus's original syllabus of DVDs for our household.
Ah.
So, yeah, if I remember, it was Goodfellas, Cool Hand Luke, Day the Earth Stood Still, Blade Runner, and Gladiator, the other film we just reviewed. So, good job by you, Dad.
That's awesome. Cool Hand Luke, is that James Dean?
No, it's
Newman?
yes.
Paul Newman?
Paul Newman.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a
My
movie
parents-
I've been wanting to go back and watch.
My parents like didn't care about movies at all, so it's like
Yeah, you know,
it was all of my movies have happened like as I've grown up and been like kind of like found it. Like I found Clerks, and then I found like Reservoir Dogs, and I found other people that were excited by Tarantino, and like, yeah, unfortunately, it didn't have the same.
That's got to be kind of cool, though, to curate it yourself, though.
Yeah, but like it's the same with like I wish like my parents enjoyed like music, right? Like similarly, it's like my parents, I didn't grow up in a house with a lot of records, so it's like it's nice to curate your own, but it's also like, man, I wish I had an appreciation for like what, like I think there's a longing for more and an appreciation that I didn't get, unfortunately.